Hey, it's Brilliant Blunder from 10,000 Chess Problems. Today we're going to do 14 very easy mates. So it's white's turn to move. White can win in one move. See if you can find it. I will give you a chance to pause the video to think about it. Okay, let's analyze this position. This rook is taking away these squares. The only other square the king can move to is here. So we need a move that threatens the king and this square. And that move is to move this rook up here. Checkmate. Alright, let's look at the second problem. Again, it's white's turn to move. See if you can find a move to win the game in one move. Pause your video if you need to think about it. Okay, there's actually two places to move the queen to win right now. One is to move the queen here. That puts the king in check, and nothing can capture it because the pawns can't move backwards, and the king's too far away to capture it. And that would put the king in check. And this would also work, moving the queen here. Either one is just as good. Alright, the third problem. Again, it's white's turn to move. See if you can find how white can win in one move, and you can pause the video if you need to think about it. Okay, so black can't move here or here because of the king, and he can't move here because of the dark square bishop. So we need a move that puts him in check, and the only way to put him in check is to move the bishop right here. Okay, here's another problem. Again, it's white's turn to move. Pause the video if you need to think about it. Okay, the knight is taking away this square and this square. So we need a move to... Oh, and also the king is guarding this square. So he can't... The dark square king can't go here. So if we put the bishop here, that's check. And he can't take the bishop because he'd be moving into check from the king. And he can't go here or here because of the knight. Alright. Pause the video if you want to think about this problem. Okay. This knight is taking away these two squares. And the king is taking away this square. So we just need a move to put him in check. And how to get him in check is to move this knight right here. That's checkmate. Alright. So pause the video if you want to think about it. Okay, so this rook is taking away these two squares. So we need a move to put the king in check and to take away this square. And that is to move this pawn right here, and then you can turn it into a queen or a rook, and that would put him in checkmate. Alright, pause the video if you want to think about it. Okay, the king, the only square that he's able to move to right now is here in the corner, so we need a move that puts him in check and that takes away the corner square. Pause the video if you want to think about it. And if you go like this, that's checkmate. He can't take the queen because the bishop is guarding the queen. He'd be moving into check from the bishop. And he can't go here because the queen is also attacking that square. Alright, pause the video if you need to think about it. Again, it's the same situation as the last problem. The only square he can go to is right here, so we need a move to put him in check and take away the corner square. And again, we're going to use the queen, and he can't take it because the rook is supporting the queen, and if you tried to take the queen, that wouldn't work. That'd be an illegal move because the rook is guarding the queen, and you'd be moving into check from the rook. Alright. Pause the video if you want to think about it. Okay, the only square the king can go to is right here. Actually, he can't go there because of the bishop. So the king is basically stuck, and we just need a move to put him in check. we put the knight right here, he's in check, and he can't capture the knight because neither of these pieces can capture the knight. Alright, pause the video if you want to think about it. Okay, the bishop is taking away these squares, and the rook is taking away these squares, because it can go that way. So we need a move to put the king in check and take away this square. And how we can do that is to move the queen here. That's check, and it's also taking away this square. Alright, pause the video if you need to think about it. Okay, the king is guarding these two squares. The white king prevents the black king from moving to these squares because the black king would be moving into check from the king. So we need a move that puts him in check and takes away this square, and that move is rook right here to c8. Now he's in check, and he can't go here because that's also check from the rook. Okay, pause the video if you need to think about it. This one has two possible solutions. The king can't go here or here because of this pawn. He can't capture the pawn because these pawns are guarding it. And the king is also guarding these squares, so he can't go to the dark squares. So we need a move that puts him in check without giving up what we're already guarding. And that move would be to move one of these pawns up. And it doesn't matter which one, they both work. They're both checkmate. Alright, so pause the video if you want to think about this one. Okay, now the king doesn't have anywhere he can go to, so we need a move to put him in check where he can't capture the piece that's putting him in check. So there's two ways to do it. One is to take with the pawn with the bishop. That's checkmate because he can't take the bishop because it's guarded by the queen, and he'd be moving into check from the queen. Or he could also move the queen, and that's checkmate for the same reason. He can't capture the queen because the bishop is guarding the queen, and he'd be moving into check from the queen. And last problem, pause the video if you need to think about it. Okay, here the only square the king can go to is this one, so we need a move that puts the king in check and takes away this square, and that is going to be this bishop. That's checkmate because he doesn't have anything he can put in the way. This is a dark square bishop, you can't put that on a light square. And this knight can go here, but that doesn't help. So that is checkmate.